1 million men. That is what the maps show. 1 million men holding the northeastern shoulder of Asia, the great continental empire of Manchukuo, a territory larger than France and Germany combined, dense with coal, iron, railway lines, and factories. The Kwantung Army, Japan's proudest command, the institution that had terrorized China since 1931, that had produced prime ministers and warlords, that had once fought the Soviet Union to a bloody standstill on the Mongolian border, the most powerful military force in Asia. On August 9, 1945, the Soviet Union attacks it with 1.58 million men, 5,500 tanks, and 27,000 artillery pieces across 3 simultaneous fronts. The Kwantung Army ceases to exist as a fighting force in 8 days. This is not the story of a battle. It is the story of what happens when an army stops being real, and no one tells the enemy. For over a decade, the Kwantung Army is an empire within an empire. Japan invaded Manchuria in 1931, renamed it Manchukuo, installed a puppet emperor, and garrisoned the territory with its finest troops. The generals who rotate through its commands are Japan's most ambitious men. Men like Hideki Tojo, who cut his teeth here before climbing to the prime ministership. The army sits astride a continent's worth of coal, iron, and railway infrastructure, bankrolling Japan's war machine and answering, frequently, to no one but itself. By 1943, roughly 600,000 Japanese troops stand between Manchuria and approximately 750,000 Soviet troops massed on its borders. The balance is uncomfortable. The standoff holds, and then the Pacific swallows everything. The bleeding begins slowly, then accelerates. New Guinea needs divisions. The Philippines need armor. The Central Pacific needs everything. One by one, the Kwantung Army's finest formations are stripped out and shipped south, into the grinding island campaigns that will consume most of them. In 1944, the 2nd Armored Division goes to the Philippines. In early 1945, the 1st Armored Division goes to the home islands. In March 1945, Imperial General Headquarters issues orders withdrawing all remaining elite divisions from Manchuria entirely, including the last of the tank strength. The Kwantung Army's 1st Tank Division, its final armored fist, is gone. What remains behind are ghosts wearing uniforms. Only 6 of the Kwantung Army's divisions existed before January 1945. The rest are assembled in the months that follow from conscripts who have never handled a weapon, from middle-aged men pulled from Manchurian farms and factories, from boys. The Japanese themselves assessed 24 divisions as the equivalent of 7 or 8 at full strength. Some units are rated less than 15% combat ready. The armor is early 1930s models. Type 95 light tanks and Type 89 mediums, designed for a different era and a different war. The anti-tank guns cannot penetrate Soviet armor. General Otozo Yamada arrives in Manchuria in July 1944 and understands immediately what he is looking at. He is 63 years old, a cavalry officer, an old horse soldier, a man who has spent 40 years in the Imperial Japanese Army and knows, without being told, the difference between a fighting force and a formation on paper. Within weeks of taking command, he advises Imperial General Headquarters directly. It is impossible to hold the border with the Soviet Union with the forces allocated. The Kwantung Army has been hollowed out. Tokyo is told. Tokyo sends nothing. Yamada calls up 250,000 militia. He drafts conscripts into 8 new infantry divisions and 7 infantry brigades, organizing frightened men into formations he calls divisions. Knowing the name changes nothing about what they actually are. He devises a new defensive plan: abandon the exposed border regions, fall back to the southeastern core, use the terrain as a buffer. He sets a completion date: September 1945. The Soviets attack on August 9th. In the summer of 1945, Japan's strategic situation rests on one remaining calculation: the neutrality pact with the Soviet Union, in place since April 1941, is still technically active. Soviet diplomats are still in Tokyo. Diplomatic channels are still open. Japan's military leadership holds to the hope that Moscow might be induced to broker a negotiated peace, a settlement that preserves the emperor, avoids unconditional surrender, and spares the home islands from an invasion that American planners project will cost hundreds of thousands of lives on both sides. Japan's last chord. Japanese military intelligence watches the Trans-Siberian Railway for signs of Soviet reinforcement. They are watching the right thing, in principle. The railway is the only supply corridor long enough and capable enough to move the kind of forces an offensive against Manchuria would require. They monitor the traffic carefully. Traffic levels appear normal. Their conclusion: the Soviets cannot possibly be ready before the end of August, probably not before spring 1946. An attack was expected, but as one post-war account put it, it had been hoped that the Soviets would adopt a policy of waiting for the ripe persimmon to fall. What the intelligence analysts do not know, what they cannot see from the railway they are watching, is that the Soviets are not using the railway, not for everything that matters. Beginning in March 1945, 20 to 30 trains per day roll east on the Trans-Siberian line. That is real. But alongside the railway movement, an enormous column moves overland through the Mongolian steppe. Trucks, tanks, artillery, supply trains crossing terrain the Japanese analysts had not considered a viable route. The armor moves at night. The assembly areas are deep in the rear, invisible to border observation. By August, Soviet strength in the Far East has doubled. 80 divisions where there were 40. Japan is watching the railway. 1.5 million men are settling into their assault positions just over the horizon. In the summer of 1945, a colonel general arrives by armored train in Chita, a city in eastern Siberia. He presents himself as Vasiliev. He wears a colonel general's uniform, not a marshal's. He is, in fact, Marshal Alexander Mikhailovich Vasilevski, Commander-in-Chief of Soviet forces in the Far East, and he has come to execute a plan he has been building since late 1944. Vasilevski is 49 years old. He grew up in a parish priest's household, studied theology at a seminary, and became a soldier. He is precise and controlled, possessed of the kind of operational mind that turns continental geography into a system of pressures to be applied in the correct sequence. He has coordinated fronts at Stalingrad and Kursk. He has directed Operation Bagration, the campaign that shattered German Army Group Center so completely that the Wehrmacht never recovered in the east. Stalin trusts him more than he trusts almost anyone. He does not want anyone to know he is here. The operational security is deliberate and total. A theater commander traveling incognito, wearing a lower ranks uniform, conducting reconnaissance under a false name. This is not eccentricity. This is Vasilevski communicating, through his own presence, the nature of the campaign he is building. Everything about it is hidden. Everything about it will arrive without warning. Across the border, Yamada is attempting something closer to a miracle. He calls up militia. He assembles divisions from men who have never drilled. He requests reinforcement and receives silence. In June 1945, he is still insisting to Tokyo that he cannot hold the border with the forces he has been allocated. He issues orders for the new defensive redeployment, move back from the borders, establish a defensible core, hold the southeast. The order goes out in the summer. The completion date is September. Between these two men lies a gap that will decide the war. Vasilevski is assembling 1.58 million soldiers, 5,500 tanks, and the accumulated operational experience of 4 years of the most brutal industrialized warfare in human history. Yamada is commanding formations that exist, in many cases, only on paper, led by officers who know their situation and cannot change it, defending a territory the size of Western Europe with the equivalent of 7 or 8 full-strength divisions. Neither man knows precisely when the other will move. But one of them is wrong about the timing, and the wrong one has no margin for error. Vasilevski's plan is geography made into violence. Manchuria is ringed by mountains to the west and north and faces Soviet territory to the east. A force attacking from any single direction can be contained, funneled, fought in depth. The key, therefore, is to attack from every direction simultaneously across distances and through terrain that the defender has decided in advance are either impassable or secondary. 3 fronts, 3 simultaneous axes. Marshal Rodion Malinovsky commands the Trans-Baikal Front in the west. 640,000 men, 2,000 tanks, attacking east across the Gobi Desert and then over the greater Khingan Mountains. The Khingan is the key terrain of the entire campaign. It rises steeply from the Mongolian plateau, heavily forested, its narrow passes choked with the monsoon mud of August, no roads adequate for heavy vehicles. Japanese military planners have studied this ground and arrived at a conclusion that shapes their entire defensive arrangement. No armored force can cross it in strength. The interior of Manchuria, on the far side of the mountains, is therefore left undefended. Vasilevski aims his western spearhead, the 6th Guards Tank Army, directly at the mountains Japan has decided cannot be crossed. Marshal Kirill Meretskov commands the 1st Far Eastern Front in the east, nearly 587,000 men, driving west through fortifications Japan has built into the Ussuri River valleys and the hills above every crossing point. This is the hard axis. The Japanese have prepared here. The ground favors the defender. Meretskov will have to fight for every kilometer. A 3rd force, the 2nd Far Eastern Front, presses south from the Amur River, crossing a swollen, monsoon-flooded waterway in the dark and the rain to fix Japanese forces and prevent any redeployment toward the threatened directions. 3 hammers falling simultaneously across a front 2,700 kilometers wide. And at the center of the design, an armored spear aimed at the one place Japan has left unguarded, because Japan has decided that place cannot be reached. At 5 in the afternoon, Moscow time on August 8, 1945, Soviet Foreign Minister Vyacheslav Molotov summons the Japanese ambassador. He reads him a statement. The Soviet government declares that, as of tomorrow, that is, August 9th, the Soviet Union will consider that it is in a state of war with Japan. The ambassador sends word to Manchuria. It arrives too late. At 2 minutes past midnight on August 9th, Soviet forces cross the border. On the northern axis, men of the 2nd Far Eastern Front climb into small boats and rafts and push out into the Amur River, swollen by monsoon rains, the far bank barely visible in the dark and the driving rain. Engineers and flotilla vessels work the current ahead of them. The banks are mud, the water is high. They go anyway. To the east, Meretskov's 1st Far Eastern Front surges across the Ussuri and through the border fortifications, the prepared lines that were supposed to hold. Before the Japanese can react, the front has advanced 15 to 20 kilometers. In a war that will last 8 days in its decisive phase, that first night establishes the tempo, and in the west, 600,000 men and 2,000 tanks begin to climb. The Japanese have no fortifications on the western approaches to the Khingan. They didn't think they needed any. The army now climbing their unguarded mountains is the 6th Guards Tank Army, a formation that survived Kursk, that fought through Ukraine, that helped crack Budapest and Vienna. Its crews have been in sustained mechanized combat for the better part of 3 years. They drive their T-34s up passes choked with mud and pine forest, in the dark, in the rain, Soviet engineers working ahead of them to clear routes, to build roads where no roads exist, to keep the column moving. By this same morning, August 9th at 11:02, a second atomic bomb obliterates Nagasaki. It is the single most catastrophic day in Japanese history. Two catastrophes arrive simultaneously from opposite directions on the same morning. Most of the world's attention will be on the sky over Nagasaki. Inside the Kwantung Army's command structure, communications are already collapsing. Forward units vanish off the map. Not because of resistance, but because in many places, the units that were supposed to be there are between positions, mid-redeployment, not yet at their new lines, no longer at their old ones. Yamada's new defensive line was 6 weeks from completion. Those 6 weeks are gone. By August 10th, the 6th Guards Tank Army has crossed the Greater Khingan Mountains. Soviet armor pours off the eastern slopes into the Manchurian plain below. There's nothing on the other side to stop them. The vast, flat, industrial heart of Manchukuo lies open. The assumption that protected it has died in the mountain passes. Malinovsky's spearhead is now 500 miles from its supply lines. The tanks begin to run dry. Any conventional commander stops here. Malinovsky does not stop. Soviet transport aircraft land on captured airstrips ahead of the advancing army and ferry fuel forward, can by can, to keep the armor moving. The 6th Guards Tank Army continues east. On August 12th, near Mutanchang on Meretskov's eastern axis, a company of 9 Japanese Type 95 light tanks engages a large Soviet T-34 formation. The Type 95 was designed in the early 1930s. It weighs 7 tons. Its armor is 12 millimeters thick. The T-34 it faces was forged by 4 years of Eastern Front warfare, running armor plate that Japan's guns cannot touch. 3 Type 95s are destroyed. The remaining 6 retreat. Soviet casualties from the engagement, none. Japanese infantrymen watch their anti-tank rounds strike T-34 hulls and fall away. They have watched this since the first day. Against Soviet armor, only one tactic remains available. Strap explosives to your body and throw yourself under the treads. On August 14th, Yamada returns to Kwantung Army headquarters in Changchun. He sits with his officers and waits. The following morning, August 15th, at noon, a radio broadcast begins. The voice is thin, reedy, speaking in the formal court Japanese that most listeners cannot easily parse. Emperor Hirohito announces Japan's acceptance of the Potsdam Declaration. In the Kwantung Army's headquarters, officers gnash their teeth. Some vow to fight to the last man. Some threaten to destroy the building they are standing in. The war their emperor has surrendered does not feel to them like a war that can be surrendered. Soviet commanders receive orders to continue advancing. Some Japanese units lay down their arms when the broadcast reaches them. Others keep fighting. The war is over and not over simultaneously, depending on which command post you ask. On August 16th, Yamada issues the formal ceasefire order to all Kwantung Army units. Some divisions refuse to obey it. Isolated garrisons fight for days. The garrison at Hailar holds until August 18th, when 3,827 survivors surrender. The 8 days that constitute the decisive frame run from the invasion to Yamada's ceasefire order. But the formal Japanese surrender comes September 2nd, 3 weeks later. What passes between those dates is largely aftermath. An army that has already ceased to exist as a coherent force, completing the mechanics of its own dissolution. On August 18th, in the cafeteria of the Dalizi Mining Company in Tonghua, an abdication ceremony is held. Pu Yi, the last emperor of China, installed by Japan in 1932 as the puppet sovereign of Manchukuo, reads his abdication rescript. The empire that gave him his throne is gone. The state that used him as its face has ceased to exist. He reads the words in a mining company cafeteria, and then it is done. On August 19th, Yamada surrenders his sword to Soviet representatives in Changchun. The Kwantung Army, having been ordered to chisel the imperial chrysanthemum seal from the headquarters building, completes the work. The seal comes off the stone. 40 years of service ends at a table with a sword placed on it, and Soviet officers waiting on the other side. What the Soviets find in Harbin stays in Harbin for a while. Unit 731, a facility established to research biological warfare, plague, cholera, syphilis, typhus, tested on live human subjects. The dead number an estimated 14,000, primarily Chinese prisoners of war. Its output had seeded epidemics in Chinese cities in 1940 and 1941, infecting water supplies, producing casualties estimated at 200,000. When the end became inevitable, Yamada ordered Unit 731's personnel towards southern Korea and issued instructions to destroy equipment and records. Both superpowers capture scientists. The Americans, wanting the research, put them on the military payroll at Fort Detrick, Maryland, and shield them from prosecution. The Soviets put them on trial at Khabarovsk in 1949 and allegedly absorbed the knowledge for their own biological weapons program. Both sides wanted the science. The difference was which side also staged a trial. Approximately 600,000 Japanese military personnel and civilians captured during the campaign are marched west, toward Siberia, toward labor camps, toward years of logging and mining in extreme cold on inadequate rations. About 60,000 will not come back. Among the prisoners marching west are ethnic Korean officers who served in Japan's Officer Corps. The Soviets will re-educate them and return them as the founding cadre of the North Korean People's Army. The camps that fed the Gulag also staffed the army of a country that did not yet exist. In September 1945, Chinese communist soldiers arrive in Manchuria and begin collecting abandoned Japanese weapons, rifles, artillery, vehicles, in enormous quantities. The Soviets, officially supporting Chiang Kai-shek's nationalists, withdraw from Manchuria in 1946. The withdrawal hands the communists the richest industrial territory in China. The Chinese Civil War, flickering since the 1920s, tilts in a direction from which it never tilts back. By 1949, Mao Zedong stands in Tiananmen Square. The sequence that leads him there runs through a mining company cafeteria in Tonghua in August 1945. Korea is divided at the 38th parallel. The line draws itself in the frantic diplomatic geometry of the weeks following Japan's surrender, as Soviet and American forces advance toward each other from their respective sides of the peninsula. It is still there. The debate among historians has never fully resolved. Were the atomic bombs or the Soviet invasion the decisive factor in Japan's surrender? Both things happened simultaneously, and their effects cannot be cleanly separated. On the morning of August 9, 1945, Japan did not merely lose a battle, it lost its army, its industrial base in Asia, and its last surviving diplomatic strategy, the hope that Moscow would broker a negotiated peace. The Soviet Union was not going to broker anything. The Soviet Union was already in Manchuria. When Molotov handed the Japanese ambassador his declaration of war, he closed the last door Japan had left. Both options collapsed within hours of each other. What followed was inevitable. Marshal Vasilevski accepts Japan's formal surrender from Field Marshal Hata Shunroku in Harbin on August 19th. He has traveled incognito across Siberia. He has planned the largest armored operation in Asia's history. He has set 1.58 million men in motion across terrain declared impassable over 3 simultaneous axes against an adversary who believed the attack could not come until autumn. He has in 8 days ended Japan's continental empire. After Stalin dies in 1953, Vasilevski falls out of favor. He is demoted from Chief of the General Staff to Deputy Minister of Defense, then to Chief of Military Science, then effectively into retirement. He writes his memoirs. He dies in 1977 at 82 in Moscow. The campaign he designed is largely unknown in the West. The 8 days that destroyed Japan's million-man army also divided Korea, armed the revolution that made modern China, and closed the final chapter of the Pacific War with a force the world was too busy watching the sky over Nagasaki to notice. The soldiers who survived marched into decades of silence: Soviet labor camps, Japanese pension registries, North Korean barracks. The maps they fought over were redrawn and redrawn again until the borders looked like something no single campaign had shaped. The Manchurian plain is vast and flat and largely empty. August comes to it the same way it always has. Hot, monsoon wet, the Khingan dark on the horizon. There is nothing there now to mark what crossed those mountains. The campaign has almost been forgotten. The consequences have never ended.